Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
There's a disturbing, unhealthy trend that's going on in people over the age of 50, and it's age-related. It's just another thing that kind of smacks you in the face when you're aging. It's the age-related loss of muscle and strength. And if it gets out of control, it's called sarcopenia. So here's some recent data from the University of East Anglia. That's they have Norwich Medical School. That's over in England. People over 50 lose up to 1% of their skeletal muscle mass each year, and this loss is thought to affect more than 50 million people worldwide. They go on to say it's a big problem because it can lead to frailty and other poor outcomes, such as sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is an extreme loss of muscle, physical disability, type 2 diabetes, reduced quality of life, and increased risk of dying. So, yeah, I mean, you've heard the term, don't worry, he's strong, he'll pull out of it, about people in the intensive care units. Well, it's true. For instance, studies over the past 5 years have shown that older people with a stronger grip strength, their hand strength, they just survive longer, they have a better quality of life, they have a longer health span and lifespan. They've shown a similar thing with gait. Gait is the way you walk, so if you have an unsteady, poor, weak, slow gait, bad sign for how long you're going to be on top of the planet, and, nobody wants to be below the planet. So, it is an issue, and it is happening. They expect the number of people. So they said, 50 million people? Norwich Medical School said 50 million people were affected by this muscle loss. It's expected to increase dramatically over the next 25 years. So, when you don't have the muscle, you're more likely to fall and hurt yourself, hit your head. You're more likely to fall and break your hip. Muscle is a reserve of strength. There are studies showing that people with more strength do better in intensive care units and after surgery and after illness. Otherwise, if you lose all that strength, if you lose all that muscle, if you develop sarcopenia, which is a more extreme level of muscle loss, you develop frailty syndrome. And frailty syndrome is terrible because all those diseases of aging rush into your life, like Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, heart failure. It's just not a good thing. Increased risk of having an infection be more dangerous in you. So, welcome to my podcast episode, how you can help prevent and reverse age-related muscle loss. My name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a nutritional pharmacist. I'm also the senior scientific officer over here at Invite Health. Please subscribe to our podcast and please leave us a review. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Invite Health. And all of the information on today's episode will be linked in the episode description. And you can visit invitehealth.com/podcast for more info. So, let's get going. There's actually a group of supplements that will help you with age-related muscle loss. It's not just one supplement. But a lot of the conversation we're going to have here today is particular amino acids. What are amino acids? When you consume protein, you release enzymes from your digestive tract and from your pancreas that break down the protein and release the different amino acids. And some of these amino acids are very good for lean body mass, for muscle. And you can even shrink belly fat a little, some of them. So we're going to go into that. So here's a report from McMaster University. McMaster University is up in Canada. I believe it's in Ontario. And it's in the journal PLOS One, which is a great American journal. I'm going to pick out highlights of their report. Whey protein supplements, when taken on a regular basis in combination with other key nutrients, have been found to greatly improve the physical strength of a growing cohort of people, senior citizens. Yes, there's more and more of us senior citizens. I'm 67. I'm a senior citizen. So sarcopenia, now that's an extreme loss of muscle, can increase the risk for falls, metabolic disorders, that could be like fatigue, and that could be diabetes, and a need for assisted living because you become frail. Did I explain what frailty syndrome was before? Frailty syndrome is becoming more common. It's that because people are living longer. So it's that shrinking, loss of muscle, loss of energy. These people generally go outside and sit on a chair all day long, and they have little to do with other people, not communicating very well. And like I said, then all those diseases of aging rush into your life, and it's not a good thing. So they said older people who do little to prevent the progression of sarcopenia drift toward a state where they find activities of daily living, like rising from a chair or ascending stairs, very difficult or maybe impossible. So this is from McMaster University's Institute for Research on Aging. So they found that if you combine whey protein, creatine monohydrate, vitamin D, calcium, and fish oil. It's published in PLOS One, a great American journal. And PLOS One has a variety of journals that are medically related, and it's free. You can read any study. You could download and print out any study from PLOS One, great American journals, for free. So I love PLOS One. So they said they gave these supplements, and I'll give you some insight into why they would help muscle in aging people, and I'll tell you other things that help you keep muscle or regain muscle and strength as I go through this episode. So the team recruited 2 groups of men, age 70 and older. One group took a protein-based multi-ingredient nutritional supplement with the ingredients I just mentioned for 6 weeks with an exercise regimen. The other group took a placebo powder. So nobody knew who was getting what except the researchers. They followed them for 6 weeks. The subjects continued to take the supplements and the placebo while also undertaking a 12-week progressive exercise training program. So it got tougher over the 3-month period. The results were impressive. Now, this is Kirsten Bell. He's a PhD up there in McMaster University where they study aging. Most notably, the findings showed improvements in deteriorating muscle health and overall strength for participants both before and after the exercise regimen. So the exercise in general was helping them. But the supplement resulted in 700 grams of gains in lean body mass. Now, 700 grams, I mean, that's 454 grams is a pound, so that's going towards 1.5 pounds of muscle. That's not bad. I mean, these are pretty elderly people. So here's what they do. Whey protein has these different amino acids, like it has branched-chain amino acids, like isoleucine, valine, and leucine being the most important. And leucine converts to something called HMB, and that helps you build muscle, that helps you retain muscle. They've shown, like studies in the military, like in the Marines and Special Forces, etc., when they give branched-chain amino acids at a certain potency, the soldiers gain more strength, more muscle, and burn more fat than the soldiers given placebo. So there really is something to that. So whey protein does have the branched-chain amino acids, but it also has glutamine that makes tissues. It has L-arginine that helps with growth factors to build muscle. So there's a lot of things in whey protein. And whey protein's a pretty perfect protein. Just make sure it's a whey protein isolate. That means they're removing the bulk of the fat and the bulk of the sugar, leaving behind a more perfect protein. And make sure it's from the United States, because some of the whey protein coming in from China, I have nothing against China. I would love to go there. But some of the whey proteins coming in from China are terrible quality. Terrible quality. Then they gave him creatine monohydrate. Creatine monohydrate resupplies phosphocreatine. Creatine monohydrate resupplies phosphocreatine. Phosphocreatine allows you to make ATP, magnesium ATP, which is your source of energy in your muscle. So creatine gives you more endurance, more energy. It recycles energy quicker in your muscle while you're exercising. Vitamin D is involved with energy function inside your muscle. Calcium is the switch that allows the muscle to use energy. One of the reasons why your muscles get like spasmy after exercise is you pumped out all the calcium from the muscle. And fish oils are involved with muscle retention. When you give older people or athletes fish oils, it helps them retain their muscles. We're not sure why. So when they gave them these, they created more muscle than the exercise with placebo. So it meant something. It really meant something. And by the way, before you exercise, you really need to stretch. Let's just talk about that for a couple of minutes, because here in America, we're just really putting value on stretching. Because stretching, it'll help prevent you from getting a Charlie horse. You know what? Later in the podcast, like I'll do a second part to this episode, we'll talk about Charlie horses a little bit. Charlie horses are those muscle cramps you get when you overdo it or when you're dehydrated. So when you take something like whey protein or branched chain amino acids, you make something called HMB, beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate calcium. So it's a metabolite of the amino acid leucine, and there's a lot of studies. It bolsters muscle synthesis. You make more muscle. We call that positive nitrogen accretion. That's the fancy name for building muscle. Preventing muscle fiber breakdown. So on one hand, you're building muscle, and on the other hand, you're preventing muscle from breaking down. By the way, that's from a study by the armed forces. That's one of the studies from the armed forces where I highlighted that from. So here's a study on HMB, because HMB should be added to the other nutrients I mentioned. HMB, hydroxymethylbutyrate, whey protein, creatine monohydrate, vitamin D, calcium, you're off to the races, and fish oils. That'll help you get back your strength when you grow older. And when you get back your strength, you'll live a better life. Your quality of life is better. You're more capable of carrying out the activities of daily living, etc. It's easier to get out of a chair. Come on. But beyond that, it helps put off all those diseases you see with aging. I once had a great friend who was the head of the American Health Foundation. And he told me, Jerry, you want to live as long as you can and push all that frailty and disease into your last week of life. His name was Ernst Wunder, great physician, great friend. But we didn't even have HMB back then. We didn't have all the tools we have to retain our health today. Now, here's an expert reviewing sarcopenia. And they said as many as 33% of people over the age of 50 suffer from sarcopenia. But muscle health could be maintained by a combination of resistance exercise, HMB, and essential amino acids. In other words, mix the HMB with the whey protein. So once again, we're back to HMB, whey protein, creatine monohydrate, vitamin D and calcium, fish oils. They're all important for your muscles. And separately, I would do ubiquinol, the active form of coenzyme Q10. I would drink green tea before I exercise. Research shows that green tea improves your benefits you get out of exercise. You build more bone, you build more strength, you build more muscle if you take green tea before you exercise, but it has to be a significant amount, like 2 or 3 cups. That's why I use our green tea capsule before I get on my bike or before I lift weights. So here they said muscle loss is a natural part of aging, and researchers have estimated that after the age of 50, we lose 1 to 2% of our muscles every year, but strength declines as well at a rate of 1.5% per year beginning at the age of 50 and accelerates to 3% after the age of 60. So in your 50s, you're losing 1 to 2% of your muscle and 1.5% of your strength every year. But when you hit 60, it doubles. I mean, it just doubles. And then when you hit your 70s, it's even worse. There were studies showing that people over the age of 75 could have lost 75% of their strength. I mean, that's horrible. So the direct health care cost attributable to sarcopenia, degenerative muscle loss, it's about $20 billion in the U.S. alone. $20 billion. So this is the journal Age and Aging. It's a new review. Approximately 1 out of 3 adults age 50 and older suffers from sarcopenia, so it's real. Most people think that sarcopenia only impacts people in nursing homes, but these findings show that this is simply not the case. This is Robert H. Miller, PhD, telling us this. That's why it's important for adults and physicians to take nutrition seriously and evaluate whether people are receiving the nutrients needed to maintain muscle health as they age. I'm going to tell you something right now. If you think that the RDA for protein is enough for you to keep your muscles, I mean, that's like trying to row a canoe down rapids with a toothpick, okay? You need more protein than they're telling you. The amount of protein they're telling older people to get is just not enough. So you need protein, you need the whey, you need the HMB, you need the creatine, you need the vitamin D, you need the calcium, you need the fish oils, you need to drink green tea, and you need to take ubiquinol. I'm telling you, it really is important. So here's the effect of beta-hydroxy-beta-methylbutyrate on muscle loss in older adults. Now, it's a systematic review and meta-analysis. That's really cool. That means they went through all of these electronic databases and they downloaded all the studies. They went to PubMed, Medline, Embase. They got all these studies. And then they went through, the studies they're looking for is HMB and muscle and aging people. And then they went through and said, which one of these studies is really high quality? And they wound up with 7 randomized human clinical trials. And it showed that there's no doubt about it. When you do HMB, it helps older people get back their strength, get back their muscle. Now, once again, it's not the only thing, but it's at the core of building muscle and strength in aging people. It's at the core of it. So here's a second one. It's a randomized controlled double-blind human clinical trial giving older adults 3,000 milligrams of HMB a day. Now, usually they take 1.5 grams, 1,500 milligrams twice a day. You mix it in with liquid, helping lean body mass in healthy older adults. But this is interesting because they're stuck in bed. Young people stuck in bed lose muscle. I should have the figure here. Young people stuck in bed lose a little muscle, and they get it back because the muscle building, muscle repair pathways are wide open. In older people, the muscle repair pathways are blocked, they're clogged. So we have a problem. So if we're in bed for 10 days, we'll lose as much muscle as a young person in bed for a month. If a person my age, 65, 67, 70, is in bed sick for 10 days, they lose as much muscle as a person who's like 30 will lose in a whole month. The problem is the person who's 30 will get the muscle back. The older person will not get all of their muscle back. So these are people, it's in the journal Clinical Nutrition, it's the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, stuck in bed for 10 days. They gave them HMB. It prevented them from losing their muscle. Otherwise, they were losing 5 pounds of muscle. Can you imagine that? Almost in 10 days, an older person stuck in bed because they have the flu or COVID-19 or something, or a broken leg, they could lose almost 5 pounds of muscle. But when they gave them the HMB, it was preventing the loss of muscle. So there really is a lot to it. Here's another one, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll do this episode in 2 parts. It's a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human clinical trial of older people living at home. Does HMB make muscle? Does it make strength? Does it help them function better? It's in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It's the Center for Musculoskeletal Health and Aging Research, University of Nottingham. That's in England. And the Royal Derby Hospital Center. That's in England. And the Metabolic Technologies, Iowa State University Research Park. So it's American and British researchers looking at this. And they said age-related sarcopenia, that's loss of muscle. Oh, and I've never seen anybody use this word. It's a rare word. Dynopenia. Dynopenia is age-related loss of strength. I've never seen anybody use that. So sarcopenia is loss of muscle. Dynopenia is loss of strength. They said age-related loss of muscle and loss of strength are associated with frailty and metabolic diseases, like heart disease and diabetes, etc. And they're looking at beta-hydroxy-beta-methylbutyrate, HMB. Does it help with resistance exercise to improve lean body mass? In other words, strength in older adults. And they found out it was inhibiting the breakdown of muscle. That older people, when they exercise, sometimes they lose muscle. The HMB was preventing a loss of muscle and helping them build muscle over a 6-week period. Like they gained a lot of thigh thigh muscle strength. I mean, that's pretty cool because less likely to fall, easier to walk, less likely to trip. Okay, I think we have to wrap it up now. My IT people and all my people who handle media have told me, hey, you're doing these podcast episodes for too long. So thanks for tuning into the Invite Health podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or just visit invitehealth.com/podcast. We have well over 400 podcasts up on our website now, invitehealth.com. Please subscribe and leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. And I hope to see you next time on the second part of this episode of our Invite Health podcast. Thanks for listening. Jerry Hickey signing off.